Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Interwar Notes Part 3. We will be starting with slide 21. So this slide is talking about the Nazi Party and how Hitler becomes involved. So there is some misconception in that Hitler started the Nazi Party, which is not true, but it was a fairly new party once he began. So initially, he is sent there on a spy mission by the German military to spy on this German Workers' Party. But while there, he basically realizes that he agrees with their principles, so he leaves the army and joins them. As you can see, it was a fairly young party. It wasn't very large, being that he was only the 55th member. They'll change their name, and then a year later, they'll elect him the president of their party. They called him the Führer, and he introduces the Heil Hitler Nazi salute, the new Nazi flag, which is the flag you see in the upper left corner, and he introduces the symbol of the swastika, which this particular symbol actually dates back to ancient India. However, today, when we see this symbol, it's a symbol of hate. And in Germany, as well as several other European countries, actually have banned this symbol altogether. So it's actually illegal to possess. So in 23, the Nazi Party attempts to overthrow the local government in Munich and led to the deaths of 16 of them and 3 police officers. Hitler is going to be arrested and he's sent to prison. While he's there, he writes his book, Mein Kampf. The translation of that is My Struggle. So in Mein Kampf, this is basically Hitler's ramblings, and they include all the things that he believes that, one, makes the perfect German. Those who are not a part of that should be eliminated. He puts a lot of blame on the Jews in this book, as well as blaming the British and the French with the Treaty of Versailles. He basically says that, there needs to be more nationalist pride. This is that extremist form. And then ultimately, Germany will only become better by absorbing more land into their empire. So these are the things that he preached to them. And for people who are struggling, who are still angry about World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, this gave them kind of a release set. Now, it doesn't justify it by any means, but Hitler basically had the situation where all these things were going on that allowed him to be able to manipulate people. Under normal circumstances, it's highly unlikely he would be able to get a large gathering of people to follow him the way that they did. Remember that also Germany is under a severe depression before we even enter into ours. And, people need something to blame whenever they're going through those struggles. So Hitler is eventually released from jail in 24. 1930 is when the worldwide depression hits, but remember that Germany has already been suffering for a number of years. Their economy collapsed. Nazis are gaining power during this time. Their voters amassed from less than 1 million to over 6.4 million in the span of 2 years. They eventually become the largest political party. He initially runs for president, but he's defeated by Hindenburg. That's the gentleman that's in the picture with him up in the upper right corner. Hindenburg is aware that Hitler needs to be watched, so he offers him a cabinet position, and he's given the title of chancellor. Hindenburg is going to die, and within 2 years of being elected, and so Hitler takes that opportunity to basically take power. Believe it or not, it was all legal in the way that he handles this. So he combines his chancellorship with presidential powers. And he insists on being called the Führer, just like he was in the Nazi Party. So here's an image of Hitler inspecting his troops. You will see that he's got the Hitler salute here. If you see anybody giving this salute today, It's again affiliated with hate, as is the swastika here as well. So these are just symbols that are noted as being part of hate groups. Now we're going to table Hitler for a little bit, and we're going to talk about communism briefly. In the image, you see Joseph Stalin. He's the one that takes over after Lenin dies. So initially under Lenin, there was this whole idea of creating a classless society, and that everybody owned means of production and state ownership. However, under Stalin, he takes that to a whole new level because he becomes a totalitarian leader. And there is a class of society. It's the ruler and then everybody else. So really what we know as communism today should be called Stalinism. He took what Lenin had learned and studied under Karl Marx, and then he changed it to bend to the will of him, giving him total power. So these are additional images you can see here of Stalin. One is a painted image. Stalin creates this personality cult around him, meaning that basically he puts himself in a position. We see this also like right now with North Korea. People come to the border of worshiping him. Stalin will outlaw religion altogether. And he basically wants them to worship the concept of communism and him. Okay. So he eliminated anybody that could potentially compete with him. So on this slide, you're looking at the three theories and how communism and fascism are different, but yet they have very similar behaviors. So they're different in the fact that the way they function. Their similarities, though, your leaders have that complete control. Nazism does fall under fascism as well. Okay, moving on to slide 29. What's going on with Japan? Well, Japan, if you remember, once we exposed them, meaning we, the United States, exposed them to the outside world again, they took all the knowledge that they learned with industrialization and kind of ran with it. The problem is, as you can look in the map here, Japan is a series of islands, so they're limited on natural resources, as well as farmland, especially as their population begins to grow. So they wanted to expand their empire. So they start off over here in Manchuria, and then they're going to invade the Koreas at one point, and they're going to push down here into Southeast Asia, which is down this area that's not in the map, as well as select Pacific Islands. And they're basically going in for raw materials. Eventually, they want to control the entirety of the Pacific. This is important to know because that's where that's going to impact with the United States in the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So Emperor Hirohito has very little power by the 1930s. The power really lies in with Hideki Tojo, who was a military general and prime minister, and he more or less forces Hirohito to bend to his will. And here, Hideki Tojo, along with other military leaders, believed the only way to solve the problems of Japan was to conquer other areas. So again, they go in, they invade Manchuria. While they're at it, they're going to invade Korea. They're going to work their way down. So here's Taiwan. They're going to take over parts of Indonesia, which is this part here where it says the Netherlands, East Indies. That's Indonesia. Okay. And they're going to start taking over various island nations as well. Meanwhile, back in Europe, we have Mussolini, the leader of Italy. And Mussolini had basically observed Japan taking over areas like Manchuria and seeing that the League of Nations, because they have no real power, or no real ability to stop anybody, decides they're going to try to invade Ethiopia. The League, of course, speaks out against the attack, but they're unable to do anything. Britain and France try to keep the peace. They just try to do what we call appeasement. Appeasement is going to become very important as we get into Germany and just at the start of the war. And again, the world just watches. So back to Hitler. By 1935, at this point, the entire world is in a full-fledged depression. The United States has been in this depression now for almost 5.5 years. Hitler knows that countries are weak and they're struggling with their day-to-day operations. So he uses this time to basically announce that Germany is going to no longer abide by the Treaty of Versailles, and reveals he's secretly been building an army. So something else you should know about Hitler at this point: Hitler has put the people back to work in Germany, which also allows him to gain that worship-like factor from the people, because Germany actually pulls out of the Depression before everybody else. Now, to be fair, they were in the Depression much, much, much longer than everybody else. But Hitler's ability to put everybody back to work, and the way that he put them back to work, was building all the things he needed to do to build his army. So building the subs and the tanks and the trucks and the machinery and weaponry and et cetera, et cetera. People were put back to work. The League of Nations, again, unable to do anything because, they have no real power. They do speak out against Hitler, but they're unable to do anything. So the German troops come into the Rhineland, which is this yellow area here, to recoup a border area with France that Germany had lost. So the Allies resort to, here's that word again, appeasement. And appeasement basically is just to give in to an aggressor to maintain peace. The idea was if they appeased Germany, then Germany would just chill out. The reality was all that did was make Hitler want more. Okay. So when they take over this area, this opens up area to be able to attack France and then, of course, Belgium. Remember that Belgium remains neutral. So this basically inspires Hitler to do more than what he's already doing. So we now have an alliance between Hitler and Mussolini, which is Germany and Italy. Later on, Japan's going to join as well. Okay, so they're called the Axis powers. Meanwhile, in Spain, there's a fascist leader who's followed Mussolini and Hitler and decided to revolt against their democratic government. Millions of Italians and German volunteers went to Spain with full military supplies to help Francisco Franco. The Western democracies stayed neutral. Now, it doesn't mean that Americans and Brits and French didn't go and help the democracies. It's just they went on their own accord, not with the support or the materials like all the machinery and weapons and etc. From those governments. This particular battle was just generally a practice for what was going to be coming up in World War II. So this is the Spanish Civil War. So when we look here, the nationalists, you have the Republicans. The nationalists are going to be the people who are going to be the fascists. Okay, so they take over those areas. So what was happening here in the United States? Basically, we had this concept of America first. After World War I and then the Depression, nobody really wanted to get involved outside of the country. Now, when I say nobody, we're looking at people who suffered from World War I and are suffering from the Depression. We do have a handful of people saying that we had to get involved so we could stop this. But at this point, it wasn't necessarily widely accepted. So the German Reich expands. That's the German empire government. You can use either one, would be fine. So Hitler decides he's going to add parts of Czechoslovakia. This is called the Anschluss, which is union. And this was basically to form that Third Reich. So Hitler invades Austria in 1938. France and Great Britain don't do anything. However, most Austrians, because a large portion of Austria was German-speaking, welcomed Hitler with open arms. Not everybody, but quite a few. He then shifted to Czechoslovakia because of the ethnic Germans living in the western part called the Sudetenland. Czechoslovakia refuses Hitler's advances and they ask for help. However, Hitler is able to take that over because of the Munich Conference. And this is where Germany, Great Britain, France, and Italy, they decided to meet. And France and Britain decided to appease Hitler once again because they thought he would not ask for anything else. I'm not sure why they thought that would happen that way, but they did. So Hitler gets the Sudetenland and agrees, of course, fingers crossed behind his back type thing, not to take anything else in Europe. So we can see the German Empire is expanding outwardly through all of this area. So this is them coming into Austria. As you can see, all the people excited about him coming in because they were Germans and supported him. All right, so we've got the Sudetenland, which is the brown portion. Czech territory that was given to Hungary by Germany and Italy in 1938. And then we have the Czech territory that was taken over by Poland. Okay, so we see this area is here. So again, Germany's taking over that brown area. So here are different things that we can see. This is going to be here in a little bit that we'll talk about. And then we see the troops coming in, political cartoons, Hitler taking the world here. So this is Chamberlain, and this is the French Prime Minister as well. Chamberlain's out of Britain. So Neville Chamberlain returns to Britain, and he has a speech that says, "I believe we will have peace in our time." A lot of people had hope in that. However, Neville was a little bit off on that. So 6 months after this conference, after promising not to take more territory, Hitler then threatens Poland. So as we can see here, Germany just keeps adding and adding more territory. We have the Russo-German Non-Aggression Pact, and this is an agreement between Hitler and Stalin that Hitler would not invade any area of the Soviet Union, and Stalin would agree he would not attack them. They decided that they were going to divide Poland in between each other. And that was a way to protect their boundaries. Okay, this is going to end this video set. We'll have one more video to finish out this notes question. If you have any questions, let me know.